Well, you gonna talk or what?
Welcome, everybody. Are you going to let me get started, Matt? I tell
You
you,
know what?
every
I don't need
time
this. You want me to
it
leave?
never
I can
ends.
go. I can go. I don't need to be here. You're just
As you guys can tell, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm Paul Kirch. That is Matt Zalewski. I'm the founder of Boss Academy Radio, and he is the president and CEO of the Perception Management Bureau. And we are here on Unfiltered, just kind of a fun little casual Friday afternoon conversation about some sales and marketing topics. And we've been doing this for a few weeks, but obviously we're still learning our way around Blab because we weren't sure if you guys could hear us. So obviously you can. So, Matt, we have to reel you in sometimes. No, that's never going to happen.
always about Matt, isn't it? About Matt, where Matt says, "Oh no, he said the F word. He made a mouth noise. Let's all freak out."
So we're going to talk today, kind of a little bit of a continual topic we've had on. I think a lot of times people are out there doing marketing or they're calling it marketing, doing social media and other things. And unfortunately, they aren't real clear on their direction and their message isn't very focused. And so that's one of the things we want to talk about today, because I've seen a lot of this lately where I've even had clients that, they think that they have this amazing message and they'll tell me about it and they're real proud of it. And then I'll go, but that sounds like all your competitors. There's no differentiation. There's no dialogue that really separates you. And we live in a world where, everyone's carrying one of these, and Facebook's alerts are going off, email, and all these things are such distractions that we are killing people with these repetitive messages that don't differentiate us from the crowd. And so finding ways to really get a clearer direction on how we position ourselves, I think it's so critical. And Matt, I know this is something you deal with a lot with your clients, so talk a little bit about that process.
Well, I just want to clarify in terms of, are we talking about entrepreneurs kind of losing focus on what they're doing or losing focus with their message? Because there's a clear delineation. Go ahead.
Let's talk message first, and then we'll talk about the other piece, because I've got some things to add to that too.
Well, the message is, it's so easy to, I think, take what you're doing, take your message in front of your clients, and try to accommodate too many people and make it too vanilla, and the focus is gone. There's no differentiation, and you end up being part of the noise, and that's the worst thing to be, especially right now, where if you don't have a clear message to send to your demographic, and you're not doing it in a way that makes you stand out, you're going to end up being, they're going to scroll right by. And it puts a lot more pressure on the marketer, on the entrepreneur, on the small business owner to understand what their demographic needs, how it applies to their service or product, and then apply that and say, okay, what can I say to them either initially or as a follow-up that's going to trip, it's like a tripwire in their brain. It's something that's going to basically make them, number one, pay attention, and number two, pay attention for a sustained amount of time so I can deliver some information or some education on the subject. So the less you understand your demographic, the more noisy you're going to be and the more you're going to be dismissed. So again, it's the same thing I say each and every time. More research, the better understanding of your demographic will clarify your message and the way you deliver it, because you're going to be on the same page with them.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, you first have to attract their attention. If we're talking about outbound marketing or even, any marketing strategies, we attract their attention, and then it's about showing them value, and then it's about building a relationship. And I think sometimes we focus on, it's all about my product. Oh, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me. And then, oh, would you be my friend? And at that point, we've lost them. And so it's such a dance, and especially in today's just competitive market, finding a way of just being consistent and being thoughtful with your message. And I am shocked at how many people you'll sit there and ask them, it's like, okay, so tell me about your company, your message. And you'll ask one person in an organization, and that person will have a totally different story than the person that sits next to them. And everyone in that company is saying different things, and it tells you that nobody sat in a room together coming up with a clear direction for that company. Some companies do a better job of that than others, but most do not.
Yeah, there's two things in terms of people working together for the same organization. Just because they're saying they're in the same room together, I've been in meetings where there have been four people and 12 and 15 and 20, and depending on how the meeting is structured, who runs the meeting, and what the overall, thing is that they're talking about, the reality is you could have each one of those people walk away from that meeting with a different conclusion and a different picture in their mind of what the outcome should be. That's just a bad meeting, bad organization, and so on. But I think the same applies to your audience. The first thing that people have to understand is that your clients, a lot of people like to Disneyfy it and say, "Oh yeah, they do," blah blah. No, they don't. They don't give a shit. They really, really don't. They care about what you can do for them. So, when you start out your marketing message, it has to be about them. If it's about how awesome you are and your product is, you're already losing about 70%, right? So if you start out, everything has to be about them, their pains, their desires, what they're running to, what they're running from. It's all about them. What you like is irrelevant. And I'm talking to you, Paul.
True.
I'm talking to you.
That's so true. Well, we fall in love with our own products and services a lot.
But we should,
we should fall in love with it. But you gotta recognize that what you love isn't necessarily what the buyer loves. Which is more important, that you love it or that they love it? And yes, you need to love it. You need to believe in it. But they have to. What's that?
It's more important that I love it, for sure. I'm kidding.
Well, that's just because you're an egomaniac, and
That's true.
But that's beside the point.
I'm sorry.
But no, seriously.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's the big rub, though, is that often we love our products and services. And I have clients that I will talk to them and I'll say, look, we need to make some changes to how you're approaching this. And they look at you like you just told them their baby's ugly. And it takes you really need to be able to be firm with that if you're trying to convince them that they may need to make changes to their message, and then back it up with, as you said, research. And that's where it comes down to finding out what's the market really saying about you. And it's shocking sometimes what companies find is that, we've been doing this a long time and we've never asked our clients what they thought. They seem to buy from us. They seem to like us, but we need more clients. We don't understand why we don't have more. We don't understand why we lose some, but we never ask them, how our message is resonating or what we're saying, if it's what matters to them.
Right, exactly. But again, it's how do you effectively research your demographic when you have when you don't know how to do research? Because a lot of these companies, and again, this is like you said, it's not just a small entrepreneur that struggles. You could have a medium-sized, even a large company, and some of these very, very pivotal and foundational basics get lost, and no one's really doing actual research. They're looking at maybe the way that people are responding, but are they really kind of delving into the mindset of their customer as it pertains to the product or service? No. And I know that we covered that yesterday. We were talking a little bit in our conversation, but there's a certain amount of profiling that the word profiling, if you use that word in front of most people, they're gonna be like, oh, I can't do that. I can't profile people. Well, good. Enjoy your job at McDonald's, because if you want to market effectively, you have to profile people. You have to look at their underlying behaviors, and you have to find what is the common denominators, and you have to find where it hurts. And sometimes you have to push on it. I'm not saying be a prick, but you have to understand who you're dealing with and what their pain points are. So, it has to be done. If you don't like it, great. You can always go do something else. But if you're going to market, you're going to be in business, you're going to be an entrepreneur. If you sell stuff to people, you better start profiling them, and you better get really, really good at it.
I love how you've assigned a lot of people jobs at McDonald's. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I know. It's okay.
You have a lot of power, and I love how you throw it around like that.
I know, I do. I'm master of the universe.
So that obviously profiling, call it what you will. Retargeting is a really interesting strategy. I remember when I first started seeing retargeted ads on Facebook, or I'd be out on the internet and all of a sudden I'm like, gosh, that's odd. I was just at Target looking at that last night, or I was just on Amazon looking at new TVs, and I'm getting this ad for the same TV. And then you start to realize that, okay, somebody's figured out how to put these nice little ads up based off of what you've been searching for. And that in itself is probably, you could equate that to a form of profiling, because you're really trying to target those people that are interested in, you know, the things that you have to say and have to offer. So do you know much about that process and how that's being leveraged today?
Actually, I think that retargeting is probably one of the most, at least in my opinion, effective ways to, if it's done correctly, right? Because I've done this before where I go look at something on Amazon, but it doesn't mean that I want to look at that ad for the next 21 days, right? In terms of saying, well, I looked at, you know, fans or something on Amazon, and now everywhere I go, I see freaking fans. That's going to drive you crazy. So I think that retargeting works, but it has to be the companies that are doing it. They have to, in my opinion, they have to be more intelligent. It's still in its infancy, and I think that as they progress, they're going to realize, well, just because he looked at, you know, watches on Amazon doesn't mean that he wants to look at ads for watches for the next X amount of days, because that gets a little old. So we're going to have to mix it up a little bit. And I've noticed that since retargeting came on board and started being, you know, people started using it in mass, their behavior algorithms are picking up on the fact that people are rejecting these ads. Because you can go in, like, if you know, if you're viewing a retargeted ad and you don't want to see it anymore, you can click on that and let them know, and they use that as feedback. But a lot of people just get really kind of tired of it and they just turn it off. They say, I don't want to see this ad anymore. So what happens to, you know, when the organization that's paying for that ad to be shown, when they get that stuff back, what that could lead, if they don't understand how retargeting works and how their customers think and who their customer is, they might look at that information and say, well, this person doesn't want to see my ad anymore. That doesn't mean that they're not interested. They're just sick of seeing your ad. Maybe they already bought, maybe they plan on buying in the future. So there's a little bit of growth. I would say, you know, retargeting is kind of in its early adolescence.
Yeah, well, I think that's very true. But, you know, you mentioned something there, though, you know, people getting sick of a message or getting sick of an ad. And it's interesting because traditional sales, you know, there's obviously some bad practices out there. There's salespeople that are guilty of stalking their prospects. But in this noisy world we live in with a lot of distractions, it's not okay anymore, or it's not enough anymore to just reach out a couple of times and try and build a relationship. We need to actually make more effort. And if we know somebody's expressed interest and we're following up with them offline doing traditional sales, it's between 5 and 12 outreaches gets 80% of all the sales. Most salespeople make 3. Most entrepreneurs make 3 to 4, you know, at best. And then they move on because they're looking for that low-hanging fruit. But I think that there's something to be said for that. Even if somebody gets sick of my ad or message, there is often a top-of-mind awareness benefit that comes out of them seeing that. And people often forget that annoyance, but they can't get you out of their head because they're like, I know that brand somewhere. I know that guy somewhere. I know that ad somewhere. And so we have to be careful that we don't just get fixated on this. People don't want to hear it, so we got to stop doing it, because there is something to be said for putting ourselves out there more than once, more than twice, and being consistent with our approach. So, I mean, that's I think it's a fine line, because we want buyers to not be annoyed by us, but if they're not annoyed by us at some point, it probably means we're not out there enough that for them to be annoyed by us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think that, you know, leveraging retargeting in such a way where you can change, because I've seen the same ad being shown over and over now, and I pay attention to it because I'm kind of, you know, we're in this business, so we look at these things a little bit differently. But when I see a retargeting ad with the same ad, that to me reflects the fact that there's some laziness or some lack of information that occurs in the organization that's putting the ad out there. Because again, you can change the ads, you can profile the individual a little bit more by trying to see if different types of ads are more appealing, see what gets the reaction. And obviously that's a whole different mechanism versus getting someone on your mailing list. Because once you get them on your mailing list, your options explode literally in terms of what you can do. You can look at open rates. You can look at where they went in terms of links provided in the email, what they watched, how long they watched it for, and you can throw that into an email responder like Infusionsoft or other ones, whatever, and you can dynamically control based on their behavior what's going to happen next. So you can customize their experience based on their behavior. So from that perspective, the options open up tremendously once you get them into, like what I call your side of the house, because now they're in your playground. Yeah. You get to kind of control, the reality tunnel that they experience when they're, dealing with you via email or looking at your stuff as responding to direct marketing. But retargeting, they have to get a little more creative. They have to find different ways to hook someone where you keep the name in front, but you don't irritate them.
Absolutely. Hey, I want to see if we can try something here. There was a great comment over here.
No, we will not be trying anything new.
Never. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we're done then.
We're done. Later, guys.
Here in the chat window. And I apologize. I don't know your name. It says NH for real. My former employer continued to hiring and flirting with marketing staff. They'd hire them when the business was good and fire them when not so good. Do you want to come in and talk a little bit about that? Tell us real quickly that example. If not, we can just talk about that topic, because there's not a consultant out there that can't relate to this, including Matt and myself, when we've had those engagements where when things are good, they're spending money. But then when they get too good, they stop spending the money. And then when things go bad, they stress about the money. And it's like there's this dance. It's like, why not get a consistent process in place? Because this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. These are not meant to be try them once and then move on. It's like, I'll give an example.
Go ahead.
Boss Academy Radio, my podcast show, I hosted a live radio show for 8 months before moving it to a podcast. When I moved it to a podcast, I, for months, thought, man, no one's listening. I had this drive time show in Dallas and was feeling like I was building up a nice little following, moved to a podcast, kind of starting over. And for months, I was like getting frustrated. Once I started to get better metric tracking and started to see that, okay, there are people listening. And now, okay, all of a sudden now I'm showing up on iTunes, what's hot. Now all of a sudden I'm getting more and more people downloading, and all of a sudden the show starts to really take off. It's kind of that with marketing. It's kind of like that with a lot of our sales efforts. If we try something, dip our toes, don't get instant ROI, don't get instant results, we walk away scared thinking, okay, well, we don't want to put more money towards that. Let's try something else. This stuff sometimes takes time to formulate the right approach. I'm not saying we waste our time, but you can't just dabble and try something without putting some sort of tracking in place and some sort of consistency. So you mentioned research, but it's also important that we really have a handle on how we measure what's working.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. You've got to delineate between products and services that are, hey, I need it right now. I'm going to go on a search engine and look it up, and things that are more long-term, right? If you're looking for something that's going to take stains out of your carpet because you spilled some wine or your dog made a mess or whatever, you just want to get online and find something and go, okay, I'm going to buy this or I'm going to do this. That's more of a reactionary activity. So when you do a small test for a product or service that's reactionary and it doesn't work, that's quantifiable as, okay, maybe this is not the right place or medium or type or whatever that we're doing. Let's switch something over and test one more time. And you can do small tests to kind of probe the area and say, okay, what's working and what isn't. What I think you were talking about is basically when you're looking for a product or service that's a little more strategic or the outcome of a planned type of activity, that's when you want to stay in front of them on a more consistent basis. And that's when short-term tests have to be reconfigured just a little bit to see if they could warrant that. So, I mean, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of different products and services, and a lot of them that are very reactionary. They are the thing that happens after something else happens. When you do small tests, for those, the small tests are valid. For the more longer term, the smaller tests have to be recalibrated to make sure that they provide feedback that's actually applicable to future behavior. But that's all part of knowing what you're doing, knowing your demographic, and evaluating your data intelligently and not jumping to conclusions immediately.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's all critical stuff. And we were talking a little bit today about unfocused messaging, inconsistency with our approach, and kind of losing sight of really determining why the people out there are interested, or are they interested, and how do we make them more interested by doing the research, being consistent with our approach, and actually putting a little bit of metric measurement behind it to measure what's working, what's not. Short-term strategies versus long-term strategies, two different topics, to be honest with you. And you know that as well as anybody. Yes, testing, split testing, doing things, seeing what's resonating, driving traffic, all great stuff. But if we're talking about long-term strategies, so many people walk away before they've seen results because they don't have any true way to measure.
Right, but if you know your product and service, and you say, okay, let's say I'm marketing to mid-sized businesses. What's their
Let's say that.
Yeah, right. You say that, and then I'll answer. No, I'm kidding. So you've got these mid-sized firms. What's the sales cycle for them, right? Are you talking 30, 60, 90 days? What's the most effective way to keep them engaged, provide them with quality information so that either when they finally make up their mind,
you're freezing up, Matt.
And they say, okay, we're going to allocate X amount of dollars for whatever. Well, something I can do about it's the internet, Paul.
Your fault. Unless you own the cable company or the internet company that... Which I do. I own the local.
It's
much better.
So it is technically my fault. Is it better now?
When you freeze up. That's very. Is
this smooth?
I love it when you freeze up, and I also love when people give you props and you get distracted by it. I see those eyes of yours dart. Yeah.
I never get distracted. I have a little piece of tape over the prop area so I don't see it because I know that you like to play around.
That's a great way to segue into something else.
I have a little piece of tape.
We could talk about this topic and go on and on and on, but let's talk about something I think a lot of people struggle with. I actually had a business that was flourishing, doing really well, and all of a sudden I got a lot of things on the personal side of my life that got in the way. I got stressed, I got depressed, I got distracted, pulled away from what was really driving my business. So marketing, sales efforts, those were nice things to implement, but I wasn't in the frame of mind to do anything other than just kind of go into survival mode. And that's a company that is doing that, and you're a solopreneur. It's a dangerous place to be. I had to find a way of getting myself back on track. So let's talk about the entrepreneur out there who loses sight of what's important, loses sight of the things that are bringing money in. And there's a lot of people out there that are just purely driven. They never could even imagine allowing that to happen. But there's as many people out there or more that when they go into that dark place or they get stressed or things just overwhelm them, the brakes come on and they're just trying to find a way to get through things. Yep. I'd never really gone through that, but it was a tough period. So talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you need to do is talk to your doctor about Xanax.
All for medication if
or just
I
go
choose
get some
neither.
Blow.
I actually
just pick one and go with it.
I'll tell you what worked for me. And
bourbon?
I talked about this on this call I did this morning, but it wasn't meth. It was getting clear, clarity on what I was trying to do, where I was going. Because what I found is I was coming to the office and doing instead of thinking. And yes, sometimes thinking can get in bad places, but I wasn't getting clear on direction. I wasn't getting clear. I would just come into the office and doing tasks. And sometimes I wasn't even getting those done. So I had to go back to the drawing board and start a better morning ritual, start better planning, and realized, and we talked about this yesterday, that imperfect action is really what we need to be focusing on, because that's the other thing that gets in the way is sometimes we don't execute on an idea because we don't have it all planned out. We don't have it perfect. And we say, well, we're going to wait. I want to get some more pieces in place. instead of taking action immediately. And if we take action immediately, it can be imperfect and get us to perfect places, because imperfection as a starting point allows us to measure what's working, what's not, and go back to the drawing board. But not taking action, what happens is we get a million reasons why that idea is a bad idea in our head, and we stop saying, yeah, that's a good idea, but it just doesn't seem like the right time to execute on it. And we make a million excuses. And every one of us has had $1 million ideas, possibly $1 billion ideas, that we haven't moved forward because we let fear get in the way or other things distract us and didn't take action. So take imperfect action immediately.
Absolutely. Well, I think that if you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, or if you're like us, you run kind of your own thing, you run your own gig, the likelihood that you will always remain on course that's just bullshit. Everyone is going to go off the rails at some point for one reason or another. And I think that to look at that as something to be feared, it's just assume it's going to happen. And when it does happen, develop a plan to get yourself back on track. It's not always the worst thing in the world to press a reset button. Sometimes we go off track because our minds are so devoted to a task or a purpose. Your mind just wants to let go for a while. So if you don't give it that space, it's going to arrive at that space on its own, and that'll be it. So, when you do freak out, like you said, write down simple tasks you can do that get you closer to your goal and just start doing them. Don't worry about losing track or going off track and losing time. What's done is done. And like you did, get clear, define some goals, define some tactics, and go back to doing them. And eventually you're going to get back into the groove. To me, when I do have those days or those weeks when I feel like I'm off center and I go off track, I realize that it's not the best use of my time, but in certain ways, it might even be part of the creative process that happens to people that work independently, which is a lot different than working and being part of an organization where you have people around you kind of corralling you and keeping you on course for, to a certain extent, because they have certain tasks that are dependent on yours. You don't finish yours, they have to finish theirs. They're going to be on you like white on rice, right? Because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. When you're like us, you're independent and you're kind of out of that loop and you're really kind of on your own. It does take a lot more discipline, but that doesn't always work. But, even though it happens to everyone, to assume that it will not happen, factor it into your equation. If you think you're going to get your product or service out in 90 days, I can guarantee you it's going to be 120 unless you bust your balls, and then eventually you'll forget something.
Is that a money back guarantee you're throwing out there?
Don't forget. What's that? Oh, of course.
So it's interesting. And I on that call this morning, I was referencing a book that I read. I actually interviewed Jillian Zoe Siegel on Boss Academy, and one of the things that she had written this book about is it's called Book of Mentors. I'm sorry, it's called Getting There, a Book of Mentors. Great read. It's a simple read, but she interviewed people like Warren Buffett, Anderson Cooper, all these amazing people that have really done amazing things in their career, millionaires, billionaires, but every one of them to a T. Now, it's easy in retrospect to think this way and see this, but every one of them to the T was at a point of make it or break it, and some of them were stressed, living in cars. Warren Buffett was deathly afraid of public speaking and almost didn't learn to public speak because he was afraid of getting on stage. Now he's an amazing speaker. Every one of them. And it made me realize that, you know what? Sometimes you have to go through those dark times to find the light. And I think that's a really important reminder for entrepreneurs out there, especially the solopreneur and people that don't have a lot of support, because even if you've got employees as an entrepreneur, you have different stresses than employees. You have different challenges. You're the one who's staying up nights. You're the one who's working the weekends because you have no choice. You've got to make things thrive and survive. And your employees, if you have them, live a different way. And so it becomes very lonely, very isolating. And that's why, quite frankly, Boss Academy started. But I'm not trying to pitch that, but it's what really got me through all this, is recognizing that, you know what, I had to go through that dark time to find the right path.
Right. And I think, you're saying you're not pitching it. I think you should, because I think that before we even talk about marketing and product and services and all these other things, if your head's not on straight and you don't have a certain process to manage your state, so you get up every morning and you get into the groove of what you need to accomplish and stick to it throughout the day and get it done. Like you said, we've all had $1 million ideas, $1 billion ideas. They don't mean anything. Everyone at some point has a really good idea. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, unless you get it out there, it doesn't come to fruition. But all of that begins with state management and managing the 4, 5, 6 inches in between your ears. That 6 pounds of protoplasm in there. If you can manage that, right, you can manage that. Everything externally becomes very, very easy. Internal management is the hardest thing for entrepreneurs to do. Marketing is not that hard once you figure out the processes, and neither is selling and all these other things. But if you can't get your head on straight and you can't be disciplined over yourself and you haven't conquered yourself, then you're not going to be conquering anything else on the outside either. So, and conquer may be the wrong word to use, but I think that efficiently use your brain may be another way that people
I laughed at you.
That message
I don't know why it made me laugh when you said 4 to 6 inches, because I always hear people talk about the 6 inches between your ears.
Easy. It's not.
But what made me laugh about that, and I'm not really sure why it made me laugh, is that it's like I've never heard anybody else. Everyone says 6 inches between your ears. It's kind of like, you're throwing out like this range. And I was picturing you with a 4-inch head versus a 6-inch head. So it could have. Keep your mind out of the gutter.
That could have gone sideways very, very. Yeah, it could.
Thank you.
But you didn't. You kept it together. You kept your shit together. Good for you.
If only you knew how to do it. See, I can do it for you. Exactly. Old school. Yeah. So, I think that entrepreneurs and small business owners and people like that, doing it alone is very dangerous. I spent 6 years building a business, and I embraced the fact that it was, yay, it's me. Look what I did. How cool. I get to wear this like little crown. When I started to recognize that I needed external support and needed to work with people like you and get other people on my team, not necessarily employees, because I actually have chosen to go down a different path. I don't want employees. I can build this with partners. I can build this with associates and colleagues that can get me to the same place. And I have scale and I have things that I can do. Finding that, it puts you in such a better frame of mind, and it allows you to recognize that you've got support when you got tough times. Absolutely. And people that can relate to it.
The solo thing you were talking about is, in my opinion, when it comes to business, solopreneur. Being a solopreneur or what did you call it? Solo entrepreneur. That's a strange word, but anyway, it is what it is. But what that is to me is taking the high road, because I think the people that pursue that and develop something and sell something and market themselves and are able to support themselves and their family through that process have done it the hardest way possible, right? Because if you hire people to support you, this, that, and the other, if you're part of a larger organization, there's always people around you kind of like helping you. But ultimately, I find that as being kind of an artificial thing, because ultimately, no matter what happens, you're always doing it on your own. Even if you're working for somebody else, you still have to conquer your own demons, your own fears, your own inadequacies. What being in business in a solo way does is it really rips away the facade, and you have to sometimes deal with the fact that, fuck, I'm kind of a lazy so-and-so today, but why, right? You have to ask yourself those questions, but there's no one to blame. It's not like you can say, well, Sarah, she was in my cubicle all day talking to me. No, you can't say anything because there was no one there. You're the dipshit. You screwed up. You wasted a day. You missed the deadline. It's
Sarah's
all on you.
Facebook.
But that's the
Sarah
way life is. It's always
email, living out of email instead of living out of your calendar and focusing on getting things done. That's another real big trap today is email. We fall into this. I don't know about you, but some days I feel like I could spend every waking moment in email, just responding, reacting, sending emails, feeling, oh, look at me. I did all these things today. Why is there no business? And I had David Newman of Do It Marketing on my show, and that's one of the things he had on his desk. He wrote a sign and put it on his computer that said, "Email is not my job." And he lives out of his calendar. He opens email occasionally. He has kind of a, I guess, a structured way of, I'm going to look at emails for this period of time. When he opens up email, if he's looking to contact somebody or looking for an email that's in there, he does a search for that, doesn't even get bogged down by new emails. And some people, they lose their heads at that. I know companies that say, well, we differentiate ourselves because we respond faster than our competitors. We're really responsive to emails. We make sure our clients feel like that we're taking care of them. At the expense of what? At the expense of not doing a great job of just servicing them in general? I would rather know that you're taking really good care of me than responding to my email in 5 seconds. I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think people want that immediate gratification because, social media, texting, Twitter, all that other stuff that basically turns out to be, time vampires in different type of application modes. But they want that response. But, just because a response arrives quickly doesn't mean it's quality. Quantity and time,
right.
and quick responses don't always guarantee that it's going to be quality and that anyone cares. So, or anyone. And I think that the more time you spend, and I don't think we should call it responding, because I think to me, a response is something different from a reaction. I think that what most people do is they react to email. They don't really respond to it, because responding means reading, taking some time to think about what you read, and then thinking about an intelligent response. What I get, so I'll give you an example. And this happens all the time. And I like doing this because it amuses the hell out of me. Clients, different people, whatever. I'll send an email out, and it's got 3 questions in there. 90% of the time, I get the email back. The first question is answered, yes. Second answer, maybe. Third question, forget about it. It doesn't even exist. And I'm like, did you even read the whole thing? It was just like they glanced over it. The first question hit them. The second question. By the time they got to the third question, they're already like,
that is one of my
Facebook,
pet
Twitter,
peeves.
blah,
is you
blah,
send
blah.
2 questions and get 1 response, and you're sitting there.
That happens all the time. I'm like, it's 2 questions. How fucking hard can it be? I mean, we're not doing cold fusion. We're not going to Mars. It's just a question. But I think that's an indication of how rapidly people are just on a downward.
I mean, I have nothing more to say to that. I mean,
I'll let you talk.
You nailed it. Right. That actually would be the ultimate crescendo. But I think we need to spend a couple more minutes kind of talking through this, because that is one of my pet peeves, is lack of response to email questions. And then the other thing I hate is back and forth scheduling. I actually use an amazing scheduling tool now, and part of it came out about because I had the podcast, but I also ran across this tool called Vasita a couple of years ago, and I love it because now it takes that, hey, when do you want to have a meeting? Oh, I don't know. What's your schedule like? What days are you free? And this is email correspondence. Next Wednesday at 2:00. No, that's not going to work for me. Any day other than Wednesday. Well, how about Thursday morning? Well, no, Thursday morning I'm tied up. And this back and forth, and that's like, okay, so with technology, there are some great things out there that we can really engage people more effectively, do less annoyance, and really do a better job of just managing that relationship. So that's one thing that I've integrated that has been a huge asset. And I find, ironically enough, that I get more people requesting meetings just because I have a schedule link in my email. Isn't that hilarious? Go ahead.
It's funny. Go ahead. Yeah, it's so funny you're talking about that, because a couple months ago, I was actually considering doing this, and I said,
of course,
maybe I'll try it one day. You know who Dan Kennedy is, right? Yeah, Dan, Grumpy Dan. But anyway, so Dan's got this thing, and he's just, I've always liked him. He's very much to the point, and he has a really hard time dressing things up for people. He's very much kind of a Midwesterner, direct, get to the point, get off your ass, do what you need to do type of guy. So I like his stuff, and he's very methodical about what he does. So anyway, good guy and very, very smart. But what he does is if you want a meeting with him, you have to fax him. You can't email him. You can't call the office. You got to fax him. And I'm like, that guy's fucking brilliant. Because if I have to go and fax him, I'm like, well, fuck, I don't have a fax machine. How do I fax? Do I have to get an online app? You just start. But to him, what he's doing is he's doing a self-leveling type of activity through mentally sending a message to someone saying, if you want to talk to me, here's what you're going to have to do. Realizing that if he said, you just email me, he would get thousands of emails. But he says fax, he's going to get 50. And out of those 50, there's going to be a follow-up call, someone from his office, and they're going to, qualify and triage some people. And then he's going to talk to 5 people or whatever. But the five people that he talks to, guess what? Those people are going to be paying attention. But the people that send emails. So the first time I read that in one of his, I think it was his monthly thing, and I was like, it is just so brilliant because people automatically, once you put that thing out there as a standing condition, people self-organize around it. A majority of the people will just run the other way, but the ones that do are the ones that you really want to have a conversation with. And I think that there's a brilliant takeaway from that when it comes to marketing. You can do things, you can make the threshold of entry to, let's say, your consulting thing, you can make it a little bit higher, but the people that jump through, so you're going to get lower opt-in rates, but you're going to get higher conversions.
Absolutely.
Of the
hey,
people that
I see somebody out there that it's his first time on Blab, so I don't know if he knows how to do it, but John Murphy, who is a great guy, I had him on my show, and he's a lot of fun. If you're able to join, it'd be great to have you come in. So I don't know if you know how to request access, but if you're able to, it would be fun. So talk a little bit more about, so do you think Dan does that because he's really putting people through that test, or is it just that he's been doing it for 30 years that way?
Yes. No. Okay. You just answer your own question. The reason he does it is because he's been doing it for such a long time. And he realizes he doesn't want these time vampires, talking to him and wasting his time. So he basically creates a border for entry, a certain threshold that you have to traverse to get in front of them. And if you don't do it, if you don't feel like doing it, that's why I think for some of my stuff, when I use the NDAs to get people on board, that eliminates a ton of individuals that I know that are not suitable for, for the product or service. So it's just, if you want to, if you want to get big numbers, then make it vanilla, and there's going to be a lot of people opting in and signing up. But if you want to get, if you want to really create a list that's going to be very responsive and it's going to pay attention to your message, make the threshold higher, set the bar higher and make them jump over.
And there's some great examples of people out there doing that, $10,000 price point programs, and they are not looking to appeal to the masses. You think about, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on, he's got Joe Polish, his mastermind group. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like $25,000 to get in. Yeah, and that's his event.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, the Genius Mastermind Group.
And I think
it's those price points that they seem daunting to a lot of people, but the ones that get more value because you're able to get the attention of that person probably in ways that you're not if you're a part of a mass program. I personally think it's a brilliant way of doing business because there's a lot of those strategies that exist in the offline world because they kind of have to. You can't service 1 million people as a sales rep or as a small business owner that functions offline. So you give more attention to the ones that do buy from you because they're buying at a higher price point. It's a brilliant strategy.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it is. And it hasn't really changed all that much. I mean, the mediums have changed. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, we have the internet and I have an online business, whatever the hell that means. You just have a business. You just do it online via medium. But, reciprocity, people's ability to spot scarcity, those things haven't changed and they're not going to change. So I think that when you make someone essentially put their family jewels on the chopping block by shelling out 10 grand, guess what they're going to do? They're going to show up, they're going to follow up, and they're most likely going to see some pretty meaningful results based on working with you, whether it's a consultancy or coaching or whatever. You get the guy who pays $2.99 or $1.99 or $99. He's gonna be like, yeah, whatever. I'll read that stuff later. There's no commitment, right? You know, the $99 is kind of like, oh, well, I'll get to it. It doesn't hurt deep enough. But the guy that spends $5,000 or $10,000, he's going to be like, shit, I really have to see some results. I just spent $5,000 or $10,000. So, you know, the commitment is there. And kind of like Dan Kennedy does, you know, it just self-organized. The demographic self-organize itself. All the looky-loos and the tire kickers are gone because they're off next to the next shiny thing, and they're on Facebook by now. But, you know, the individual who's really interested, and they're like, wow, I can really, you know, if I implement this, I can really make this work, and it'll be meaningful to me and my business, and it's an investment. Right away, you just have a completely different type of individual.
Yeah, and I used to
joining.
You know, I didn't want to turn business away, and I would have my pricing, and then I would have somebody come back and say, "Well, can you do it for this?" And I would take the business on because I wanted the business, and at that point in my business, I needed that business. And inevitably, those engagements where I let them kind of negotiate a better deal, they put me through the ringer, and they exhausted me. And you end up feeling somewhat, I don't want to say resentful. That's not the right word, but you feel like you made a mistake in ever giving them that break because you're taking less money for more work. Sometimes those clients that are willing to pay the higher price point, they came to you for your expertise, and they understand that that's your role. Sometimes those people that they're trying to squeeze a better price out of you. It's not that they didn't come to you for expertise, but they've already set the precedent that, hey, I'm getting a bargain here, but they treat it differently. It's just amazing the mindset shift, you see.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there are, you know, but there are also individuals that they're kind of in a separate category all by themselves. They must feel like they're getting a deal. Otherwise, they're just not going to be, you know, if that guy paid $64,000 for a Lexus, I'm paying 60 because I'm driving out of here, and I want to one up that guy who drove that Lexus out of here, you know, 20 minutes before I did because I paid less for the same exact car. But I think that taking that type of an attitude toward a service provider, a solution provider, coaching, consulting, you know, something to that effect is very, very dangerous because you're kind of abusing the provider to a certain extent. And right from the start, you're setting a precedent saying that you must get a deal. What you're really focused on is the upfront cost. You're not looking at the long term. You're not looking at the long view. You just want to get a deal. So what does that mean? What does that mean about your attitude towards your business? What does that mean about your character toward what you're going to be doing once that consultant comes on board, right? To me, that sends a signal where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put you in a maybe category immediately, because if you're that driven by price, I know how to price my stuff, and I know that it's dead on, balls on accurate. But if you're really going back and forth a lot, there's going to be some drama upcoming. So I'm going to put you in a maybe category. I'm not going to discount you because I need to do more research and we need to chat more. But if price point is that big of a deal to you, and I've done my homework and I know exactly where it needs to be, then we already have a mismatch. And if we have a mismatch before we even begin, what's going to happen 3, 6, a year down the line when we're, you know, heavily invested into each other's activities? And then you're still going to, you know.
What I want to know is balls on accurate. Is that measured with a micrometer, or how do you actually get to that level of accuracy?
I would explain it to you, but it's a technical term, and I don't think you're going to get it, quite honestly. So I'm just going to, it's a tectometer.
We got some great comments over here in the chat section too.
With the flush capacitor.
The Realty Rome said price shouldn't even come into the conversation. That's so true. Nelson W. Trent said bargain hunters equals disaster clients, and I think. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Someone who's been around the block, that guy.
I think that's a really interesting thing. It's like being a generalist, and you know, people that are not willing to say no to business because they want to take on any business, and then they wonder why their business really struggles. So in 2009 is when I started my company. The economy was kind of in the toilet, but in 2010 it started to turn around a little bit. I was at a CEO summit, And I'm sitting there around this round table with a bunch of CEOs, and everyone's crying about how hard 2009 was. And as a sales consultant, I found that 2009 was actually pretty good for me because when the economy was down, my phone was ringing off the hook. There was a gentleman there who said, he didn't say much, but he said, well, he goes, 2009 was actually our best year ever. And so I pulled him aside afterwards and I said, I love that he said that. And I said, was that true? And he goes, absolutely. He goes, well, everyone else was out there scrambling to take on any business they could get. We held true to our message of focusing on this particular industry. I think he was in the healthcare space. He was doing marketing research in healthcare. He goes, we didn't waver from that one bit. He goes, I know so many people that were just scrambling to take any business they could get. And he said, what I found is that at that time, people were looking for the specialist. And he says, we just were busier than we could even imagine. Wow. And
yeah, it's fantastic. It's just, an economy that's kind of shrinking, which the U.S. economy is clearly shrinking. I know a lot of people are like, well, look at the stock market. It's great. It's like, dude, get a grip. It's not great. It's inflated, and it is contracting. It's going to change. The way that business is done in the U.S. over the next 20 years is all the important financial attributes are already in place to determine that. But so, we as business owners have to align with that. But that does not mean that we're going to be making less money. It just means that we have to be more strategic and we have to be more focused and provide a better value and a more specialized value to our customer. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that, certain companies go out of business? Absolutely. I think the generalists are going to fade off and the specialists are going to, consulting is going to grow, I think, exponentially over the next 20 years. So, but again, it all boils down to knowing your demographic and providing something that's very, very specific. And
and it's really interesting, the whole niche versus generalization topic. Now, my show and bossacademy.com really, it focuses on kind of a broad audience. I was a entrepreneur for 21 years. No doubt about it. I wanted to own my own company, but I was married to this paycheck. The more money I made, the less likely it was that I was going to be able to leave that and go do this. And the more my career advanced, when I finally did start my own company, it was because I was kind of at a turning point where I was not willing to go work for someone else. I was part of an ugly acquisition, kind of a painful time, but it was this really liberating experience. I was a guy who didn't grow up around entrepreneurs, didn't have a lot of that support. I want to provide that. So Boss Academy flourished and grew out of that. But I also recognize that entrepreneurs, because I am one, sometimes face a lot of challenges. So the show really focuses on the entrepreneur, and small business owner. Pretty broad topic. But the reason I think it works and resonates is because my mission is so strong, and my message, I believe, is strong. So I feel like I can get away with that type of broad audience. But there's companies out there, there's people out there there's a guy, I think his show is The Manly Guide to Pinterest. And this guy, all he does is he talks about Pinterest on his show, has people that are doing things on Pinterest, and he focuses on men. Talk about a extremely niched offering, but he does really well with it, and he gets a great following. So my point is, I think that if you are going to have a broad audience that you target, you better have a strong message and you better be very consistent with it.
Right. But here's the thing. It's just all about, and you said one keyword in there, and I got a meeting, just one. Out of all that, just one thing.
Yeah.
No. I actually have to, I have to get on a conference call. But here's the thing. What you said, the one word that I think everyone should walk away with is resonance. Whether you're talking to 1 million people or 4 people, the point is to resonate with them. If you can resonate with 1 million, go for it, right? Not a big deal. But it's all about resonance. It's all about saying things that hit home, that hit core to those individuals. So I think that in that guy's situation, if he wants that particular type of a demographic, but what you're doing with Boss Academy and everything else is that the information that you're providing is applicable to many, many, many people. So your audience should be broad because it
and
applies
it's one
to
that
them.
I
It
can
should
totally,
resonate to them.
I feel like I
So
can relate to those people, and I think they can relate to me. All right, well, this has been an amazing conversation. Once again, my name is Paul Kirch. I am the host and founder of Boss Academy Radio. You can learn more about it at bossacademy.com. In fact, this show will be up on YouTube if you want to check it out at Boss Academy Radio out on YouTube. No. And that gentleman over there,
am I allowed to watch
with
it?
the big mouth and handsome face, is Matt Zalewski, the founder of the Perception Management Bureau. And if you want to learn more about him, it's thepmb.com. And we really appreciate you tuning in. And Unfiltered is just meant to be kind of a fun, casual talk about some really serious topics. And hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and have a great day.